Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
And these independent agents call these schools up that they know have money. And they say, what if Kevin gets in the portal? How much would you pay him? Oh, I'll pay him $150,000, and they'll go to the next school. What if Kevin got in the portal? What would you pay him? Oh, I'd give him $175. And then another school might say, oh, I'll give him $200. So now this independent agent DMs Kevin and says, call me, I got some deals for you. And then they talk, and he goes, if you get in the portal, I can get you $200,000. So these kids are not thinking about getting in the portal, but when they have these people call them and say, if you get in the portal, I'll give you $200,000. And by the way, I'm going to take 15, 20% of that. And so these guys are just stealing from these kids. An NFLPA agent gets 3%.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, Honky. I'm with Boomer.
Well, I'd just like to announce that I will be entering the podcast portal as part of God's plan. And I would also like to announce I am returning from the podcast portal to rejoin the Redcast. So,
welcome back, Boomer.
Yep, just boom. It's all God's plan. So we're good. So.
He's back as quick as he's gone. Thank you. Rob.
Are you sure? Yeah, that's me. Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking about entering the portal, but I got a few calls from my agent, and quite frankly, they can't afford me.
They can't afford it. Well, is your agent taking 20% like Coach Norvell there from Colorado State was saying?
Oh, I've never actually been paid.
Well, we will also have Redcast Abby. She'll join us a little bit later today. She's a little under the weather right now, but she'll be ready by the time we get to talking some volleyball and men's and women's basketball. But we're going to start with a heavy dose of football here. We're going to talk, as the title of the show says, carousels, coaching carousels, the transfer portal. It's bowl season. It's craziville season right now. And I think that video right there, former Husker offensive coordinator Jay Norvell, now at Colorado State, where producer Skip, a huge fan and an alum there. Boomer, when you see Coach Norvell talk about NIL there, or not NIL, I mean, really it's the portal and how the payment of these players and how I guess the insertion of agents coming in and really unregulated right now what's going on. What are your thoughts as you see him talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, he brings up a lot of points and things we've hit on, in the past. First off, with NIL, just it's complete chaos. Nobody has any idea really what truth is. There aren't any numbers. Agents can say all these things. Like he said, they're independent agents, so who the hell knows, how regulated any of them are, how honest are they? There's been a thing going around Twitter these last couple of days where one website tried to rank what the estimated NIL collectives were for everybody. And I think Nebraska was somewhere down the 20s or 30s on that, and again, it's so hard to predict to actually project any of that with any accuracy. So, you don't know what are people really making. Are these offers fair? Are they realistic? You've heard Tulsa has had problems, with players saying they promised us money and offered none, which should be no surprise once it's Tulsa. What do you expect? But, it's just part of the problem. And then, like you said, just the percentages these agents take. Is that really what they're taking? Maybe. I mean, it might be. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's more. Nobody knows because it's unregulated. And again, that's probably another reason you'd really like to see more regulations, things more contractually spelled out for players, where I know people wouldn't want to, coaches and stuff probably don't want to hear it, but like even a players union where all this stuff would be agreed to ahead of time that, here's licensed agents, here's the percentage cut they take. This stuff should be open to everybody.
Boomer, this is
donate.
This is crazy talk. This sounds like, you almost have to have a plan and maybe have some leadership and who knows, a commissioner, someone that could be, leading this up for college football. But we'll get to that. We'll get more to the portal talk. We're going to start here. Let's talk first about the coaching carousel. And obviously we'll talk Nebraska here with the Carousel to begin with. We have a new defensive coordinator, John Butler. He's not new to the program. He's been with us this year. He got hired over the summer, and he was the defensive coordinator at Penn State in 2013. He does have some Big Ten DC experience. Also, the associate head coach, Phil Snow, who has been brought in and out over the last year or so of the program as a consultant. Well, he's now been hired as an associate head coach. And then defensive line coach, Terry Braden. He's with the Kansas City Chiefs right now as an assistant D-line coach. He's being brought in as the defensive line coach, thus, of course, replacing Tony White and Terrence Knighton, who have left and gone to Florida State. And on the offensive side, Dana Holgerson, really the one and only move that he said he really needed was Dukel Shorts, the Kentucky wide receivers coach, who was with him over at Houston for 3 seasons. So someone that knows what Holgerson wants and demands. And also, for what it's worth, there's a couple of, as we get to talking about portals, there's a couple of receivers from Kentucky that could be coming over to Nebraska as well in the process. So the portal giveth, it taketh. As we get to talking about that, we'll probably be talking about 105, the 105 limit. But Rob, I'll start with you here as we look at the coaching carousel. I mean, what are your thoughts just in general right now of what goes on this time of year, in December when coaches are coming and going before bowl games, right as the season's done? I mean, this is crazy time.
Yeah, it's always a little bit frustrating, I guess, in a lot of ways too, because, these are the teams. Like, the whole point of a bowl game is to basically showcase the teams that earn the right to play in these bowls. And now all of a sudden you've got all these coaches leaving, you've got players leaving. You're not going to see any of the players on the teams that, got the team there in the first place. A lot of these guys are either being asked to leave or leaving on their own into the portal. You've got coaches going and taking jobs at other colleges. It's just crazy to me. I know it's always kind of been a thing to happen, but at the same time, I mean, I guess now it's literally next man up year round at this point is what it kind of feels like. It didn't surprise me that they elevated Butler. I mean, and Abby has said it a million times on Twitter, and, I've been kind of avoiding Twitter as much as I can without just based off the negativity that's going on there. But, he was hired to replace Tony White, and now people are freaking out because they actually hired him to replace Tony White.
to do what most people thought was probably going to happen.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that to me is just crazy because everyone knew that this defense this year, as great as it was supposed to be like an amalgamation of Butler and Tony White's defenses, right? Like, they were supposed to be combining a lot of these ideas. And I believe that was being done so that when there was an actual transition, it wouldn't be as hard for the players to pick up the scheme, right? They'd understand at least the general idea about it. Sure, he had the title of DB coach for the year, but I mean, if anyone thinks that was really the only job that he was doing and his only role on the team, then you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's to your point. That was something that it was definitely well known when he was brought in that this was someone that could be the next replacement for Tony White whenever that would happen. Boomer, I think it's kind of interesting that we kind of are talking about the portal and the lack of that coaches, that they will up and leave anytime. Where's the loyalty, or where the players will do that and they get beat up in the portal. But really, when it comes to coaching here, we have coaches that come and go all and you listen to Coach Rhule talk about it, and he's such a pro at this. He doesn't begrudge any of these guys. It's just, this is what it is. Coaches are going to do this too. This is kind of the business that we're in.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been that, and it really, like you're kind of saying, it has always happened, but it really just gets magnified now with just the sheer number of portal entries you get, and the fact it's pretty much limitless now. Your abilities to transfer, you don't have to set out as much, and that's also gets coupled with we'll cover it later too. The roster size reductions where players have to, players are getting asked to leave. Or going to be asked to leave, or realistically, no, they're not going to have a landing spot, come season start. And it would make sense to start early, because if you're going to try to find a landing spot, you're going to want to start as soon as possible, because there's, I mean, how many thousands of players are going to be in the portal here in the next, in this month ahead. And a lot of it is, just the challenge of just having to place the portals where you do. They try to line them up with, academic calendars, I think, as much as possible, since, they are still technically student athletes. And they'll need to be, enrolled at schools, when the next semester rolls around. So that's kind of why you see it where it is. And it's just a tough part, but the football season extends as long as it does, and, kind of runs into January, and God, it's almost running into February now at the rate college football, expanded. So that's just going to be a challenge, especially for those teams that do make the playoffs, is how do you keep a roster together, with that transfer portal window kind of going as it is, without any sort of, changes to it. And I imagine at some point in the future, we'll see a change to it, especially after this playoff cycle is ended and they expand it or adjust it as is. I think there'll be some sort of changes to it. And it's kind of the sad thing with bowls is, Rob was talking about how it was kind of that culmination of what a season is, and now it's lost that. It had been losing that for years, once players started to set out for the NFL, which, again, you can't really begrudge them doing that. If they got a chance at millions of dollars versus, playing in the Pinstripe Bowl or a Duke's Mayo Bowl, I mean, you can't begrudge them that. So, the bowls have now become just kind of a stepping stone into next season more than it is a culmination of your past season. I think it's probably the fair.
Yeah. Well,
it's a new spring practice. It's almost a scrimmage, I mean, for your new players. And
from a developmental standpoint, if you want to be a developmental program in today's day and age, you want to get the bowl games, because that's probably when you're going to be playing young guys. Because a lot of your older guys, unless you're in the playoff itself, a lot of those guys are going to be taking off. We'll see what happens with like Ty Robinson. I know he said that he wants to play, but again, guys will say that, and then sometimes you get a well-intended person that gets in your ear and says, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't," and who knows?
I hope agent may get in your ear there too and say, "Hey, I behoove you not to," in this case,
Yeah, I will. I'd love to see him play one more time for Nebraska, but we'll see. As far as with the coaching carousel, we're not the only ones going through this right now with players coming and going. On the screen here, we have Mitch Sherman. He retweets one from Stuart Mandel. He goes, "Who else can we bring back?" Well, Stuart says, per Bruce Feldman, Rich Rodriguez is now expected to be the next coach at West Virginia. On any other day, this would have been the big story in college football by a mile. And so that, you have Rich Rodriguez coming back to West Virginia. You have Bill Belichick, a 400-page novel that he wrote, to go to North Carolina. Again, it seems like at some point, Rob, I'm going to say that we're just making this up, but this is all happening. This is what college football is. Like, I've been so busy with work, I haven't been on Twitter all day, and maybe that's been the best thing for my own personal sanity, because it just sounds like there's craziness happening at every turn.
Well, college football is quickly becoming almost like a mirror or like a minor league of the NFL at this point. And the NFL season is one of those ones that, the way they keep it interesting is there's always something happening, right? It's either the trade deadline or it is NFL free agent signing, and then it's the draft, and then next thing it's preseason and the season, and the Super Bowl goes all the way into February now, and then it's just a continuous cycle, and college football is quickly becoming that. And I'm sure if we went back on some shows somewhere in the past, you'd see or you'd be able to find me just basically saying that with the NIL and all that, that's basically what it is becoming, right? Like it's just becoming the same as the NFL. They're figuring out a way to model it after that. Literally, people talk about college football nonstop all year round, and the same with the NFL. And you don't see that really in any other sport out there. You don't see it even with the NBA or the NHL or, Major League Baseball right now. There's all kinds of free agent signings going on, but let's be honest, nobody's paying that much attention to it anymore. At least I know I'm not. I mean, so it's just one of those things where you embrace it. I guess you either embrace it or it's going to pass you by. I mean, this is just the reality of the way things are right now, and we can hate it or we can love it. But I also see a lot of these coaches are starting to bring in NFL guys, and there's a reason for that. You know what I mean? It's as the money gets bigger, the cream is going to rise to the top, eventually again, which it always has, but it's going to continue to do so, I think. And It's just what it is, man. It is what it is. Honky.
That's right.
It is.
Well, Boomer, I was remiss in some of the. I mentioned Rodriguez. I mentioned the craziness of Belichick. Redcast Abby on the back end here sent a very good one. The Scott Frost guy. Have you heard of him? He ended up back at UCF.
Yeah, I think he was an NFL guy for a brief period, wasn't he? Like an analyst or something.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so again, this is it's been a wild week.
Yeah, it's been fascinating just to see the coaching moves. Some of them, we can mention this, like with bringing Butler on and naming all the defensive coordinators and assistants when we did. Some of that's, again, just spurred on by the reality of the portal that you've got to, nail down your team, secure them as best you can. Because if you go till February trying to wait and get that splash higher, half your defense might have transferred out and all the players are locked up, or where the players you might have had your eye on are locked up, and you're starting from scratch. If you can't bring a bunch of guys with you, depending on who you hire. So I think there's a reason you see a lot of movement that way. And Belichick is just going to be fascinating. I mean, do they sell like cut off sweat UNC jerseys?
I'm sure they
would. He can wear
well, they will now.
They will now.
Yeah.
And Rich Rodriguez coming back to West Virginia. I mean, weren't they suing each other when he was leaving? I mean, he left right before an Orange Bowl, I think they were going to, the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah,
he left before that and didn't even coach in that bowl game. And then I know that West Virginia.
There's probably a whole new administration there. The new AD probably just saw his record, figured, hey, that guy was pretty good. Let's give him another chance without even really looking into it.
And West Virginia's, some of the best seasons they've ever had were under Rodriguez. And a little bit of time goes by, and all of a sudden fans start to appreciate things a little differently. We might talk about that later also with Coach Solich going into the Hall of Fame right now. Sometimes a little bit of time and perspective can make a program think differently. But Rodriguez, we could do an entire show in the offseason about how he left West Virginia and that offseason, how that impacted things. When he went to Michigan instead of Les Miles, and Les Miles stays at LSU instead of Bo Pelini becoming the LSU head coach. I mean, that's a wild discussion by itself. But I think, Boomer, though, you're making,
as long as we don't hire Pelini.
Yeah, well, as you reference, I think some of the coaching carousel happens right now so that you can prevent yourself from losing players. And let's move on to the portal in that process. And just looking at this, screenshot here. Good Lord, get up there! There you go. The transfer portal tracker from Husk Guys. And two of the guys that have already entered it for Nebraska, Emmett Johnson and Keona Davis, are the running back, and then the young defensive lineman, both of those guys entering the portal and coming back and playing now for Nebraska. To your point there, Boomer, that if we don't have Holgerson lined up at OC, there's a good chance that we're not going to have our running back come back into it. That's for sure. And then the point of getting your defensive coordinator in place, knowing who your D-line coach is going to be, Terry Braden from KC Chiefs, getting those things in place at this time, even if they're not coaching right away in the bowl game. Some guys are, like Kyle Shorts from Kentucky, but other guys aren't. But knowing who you are, knowing who you're going to have, that can play a nice role in making sure that you keep some of these guys at least. We're going to have to get rid of numbers because of 105, but there's still, you want to get rid of the numbers you want to get rid of. And these are a couple of players that it was pretty apparent the second their name got into the portal that people wanted them back.
Yeah, it certainly seemed that way. You can always tell by the amount of sour grapes you see from fan bases that suddenly, turn on players that they were hyping up all season and then suddenly get mad. No, we didn't need them anyway. And then as soon as they come back, hey, it's a great piece to have back. And my God, he's coming back. It's just kind of funny watching that whole process pan out. But yeah, I mean, there were definitely names you wanted to see coming back, and those were definitely some. And, we touched on some others last week, like Daniel Kalen. It'd be nice to still have him around just for depth in the quarterback room. But, I mean, you'll just have to get somebody in the portal at this point, find the best you can. So, and some of it is probably touching on, some of the things money-wise that you can put your name in the portal and see what kind of offers you get and see what you can kind of negotiate out of your current team. If they're willing to keep you around, what else are they willing to give you? I mean, that's just part of getting paid is, testing waters and seeing what you're worth.
Entered the portal, though?
I don't know if he
because I have
put his
not
name in yet. I have seen
not.
But
I'm on the On3 transfer portal tracker here, just looking to see. And Kalen is not. I mean, unless my eyes deceive me, and there's a second page, he is not on there yet. So he is not. I'm guessing there's some conversations going on in the background about that. Probably something that rhymes with Mena Yell, and
that's
it's poetry here.
I mean, that was it did rhyme. I'll give you that.
I just made that up as I went. Can you tell?
No, really.
Yeah, but he's not in there yet.
He's not listed yet on it. Right now there's 3 Bellevue West guys from a year ago. If Kalen does indeed go into it, Davon Hall and Isaiah McMorris, both of those receivers have at least said they're going in. Again, this is a good one where I'm not sure if they've officially gone in or what it takes to officially be listed. I know Abby's in the background and she's sending us a couple of yes, this person did and this person didn't. So, as we've seen even with Keanu Davis and with Emmett Johnson, guys can enter it and they can come back. We saw it with Jabari Butler a couple years ago. He went into it. He came back right before the season ended. He said he wasn't going to go, and then he went. I mean, that's right now. That's the players have that ability to do that. It'll be interesting a year from now after the House settlement takes place. I'm curious once players start getting actually under contract and being paid by schools, which is as long as that NCAA ruling goes through, that's what's going to happen. I wonder if that's going to start to create some regulation. So that it's not just unrestricted free agency, because that's what it is right now.
Yeah, and it'll come down to, I think, what are the schools they can get away with without calling them technically employees? I mean, I think that's the big fight. That's still going to remain the fight. Are they going to put them under contracts year to year? I mean, it's kind of what scholarships were. They were a year-to-year thing. Are they actually going to try to lock them down for 2, 3, 4? And how is that going to work out with rosters? I mean, if you get a player that you're not happy with, are you stuck with them for 3 years now? Or
make them like NFL contracts and leave it up to the school to cancel the contract or not, and the player has no choice. Isn't that how the NFL works?
Yeah. Abby says here the school has to put them in the portal, so there may be a clerical delay, or there may not have completed the paperwork yet, or the school has to approve it. So, I mean, again, there is some process to this, but these are the names that at least people have said, hey, I'm going to be going into it. They're looking to leave. And so, that's just kind of where we are with the portal right now. On top of the portal piece is the NIL piece of this. And I want to show you this here. This is from 1890 Nebraska. They posted this today. So the collective, it says, Husker Nation, you know the mission. Now meet the team behind it. Allow us to reintroduce ourselves. We're the 1890 team, and we're here to make it happen. Get ready for our Together We Win campaign starting December 16th. P.S. Did we mention a $250,000 match for football contributions? Let's make it count. And there's a link. And so you can find that on their social. But it's called the Together We Win campaign. So a $250,000 match for football contributions. This is, again, I mean, we're a broken record with this, but this is the nature of college football right now. And so, that's the one thing. You love it, hate it, whatever. If you want to win in today's world, if you want to play in today's world, that's the adjustment there. I even see a little bit of the adjustment with Coach Rhule, and I think a little more willingness to play in the portal. He still wants to be that developmental program, but yeah, gosh, in fact, when he talked about the developmental program at the press conference the other day, he talked about having, going from the pros where you had a 53-man roster and now it's 105. He kind of looked at it as having 2 different 53-team rosters. One of them's your active one, like you'd have in the pros. These are the guys that are going to be playing that you're preparing each week for a game. And then your next 53 could be kind of the developmental team, the younger guys. And that's at least the way he's thinking about it. In that perspective, there's actually, we've increased numbers in this process. We've gone from 85 scholarships to 105 because everyone's on scholarship. That's essentially what we're doing with this by going to this. But you're just crushing the walk-on program in the process of going down to 105. So Boomer, we've had this discussion a little bit here, but talk a little bit your thoughts on what the 105 is and maybe even in the process, since you a little earlier, you said a lot of sense about how we could make things work in a portal era and everything. Did this have to be done in one off season? I mean, it just seems so brutal. There's no stair-step approach of let's get down to 125 next year and 115, then 105. I mean, it's all at once. But I've asked a lot there. What are your thoughts? Kind of on the 105.
Yeah, it is a very sudden, change, especially for, the larger rosters like Nebraska, which had 140, 150 guys in it at some point, this season. So that is a very abrupt shift, especially, when you've already been recruiting classes to, for unlimited roster sizes, as teams had been for a while. And then, you still got some 8th-year players playing in some programs. It's just kind of been crazy, that back end. The problem is, I think with the stair-step approach, the problem was that the revenue sharing kicks in next year. And, you have X amount of dollars you're supposed to be able to spend. And so, what happens with the, you're giving money to players next year, and then you got to cut half of them out, that still have eligibility left. I think maybe they were trying to avoid that since that was going into play right away next year. And then you'd also run into the issue of some schools not having money to pay for those expanded rosters. And they would have to, they would only be able to afford, 105 players for some of the smaller, Power 4 schools, I'd imagine, that are going to sign on for revenue sharing. They just wouldn't have the money to, even have a roster of 130 where they're paying everybody. So I imagine that was the thought process behind it, is just, rip the Band-Aid off. We're setting the salary, the size limit here. So there's kind of a cap on what schools pay everybody, and they know what that number is. And it's, I think, built for, some sort of competitive balance just between the haves and have-nots, in the Power 4 structure yet. So I think that's why it got instituted the way it is. It's not the smoothest way to do it. And, maybe the ideal thing would have been, to build up to this roster reduction before that payment thing kicked in. Might have made more sense. So you have a little more time to build to it. But that's my guess of why it happened the way it did and why they didn't kind of stair step it down. So just that kicks in right away. So, and again, that was kind of forced on everybody from the outside because people in charge kept kicking the can down the road on revenue sharing or, putting kids under contracts or paying them. Things are getting imposed on you from outside if you don't do it. And
it just
what happens. It's
blows me away how complicated this time has to be right now to be a coach in today's world. I mean, like, when we started the Redcast back in 2017, I honestly, it was a year or two in. It wasn't even the first season. It was like we were like 2 years in, and they made the change of allowing the redshirt rule, where you could play for 4 games and still redshirt. And I remember, like, at that time thinking, wow, what a a huge shift in college football. What a unbelievable rule change. Like, this is a big deal, and like that's just a bucket of nothing compared to what we've gone through now. And then even just the portal and NIL have things have gotten complicated. Now you start throwing in more things with the 105. I mean, this is talk about a challenging time to be a leader right now, trying to lead a program through all this.
Yeah, it's chaos, and it probably why you're seeing, programs, like Nebraska suddenly, people ask, why do you have, several former head coaches as coordinators? What is Phil Snow doing as assistant head coach? I mean, why do we have all these, executive type people on the staff? Why is, Stanford have Andrew Luck as a general manager of football? Now that's why there's just all these complicated things you have to keep track of. And it's just going to get more complicated going forward. Yeah. You find guys with NFL experience and bringing them on. And this is why they're doing that. So I'm sure we'll just see more and more of this. The schools that can afford it are going to, and they will. So you kind of have to. I don't see, you can't be the traditional old style college coach and survive in this. So
we talked about that on the last show, Boomer, where, one of us, I can't remember if it was you or me or Abby, but we were saying, like, this is now going to become, and I just said it earlier, it's going to become more of an NFL style model in there. And, you're going to be cutting players. You're going to be keeping X amount of players. You're limited to 105. Somebody put in the comments that if you go over 85 up to 105, you get less in revenue sharing. I don't know how that works. Don't really care, because so many of this, I mean, that 2.5 million is nothing when it comes to what Nebraska is bringing in NIL. Kind of going back to that too. I mean, with that NIL thing, there is no real regulation. These collectives aren't required to disclose how much money they're paying or giving out, as Boomer had said. So, it's just not accurate there. So these kids, some of them are making more than NFL players are, guys on practice squads, 10th round rookies, whatever, guys that are just being signed off the practice squad for X amount of dollars, with NFL minimum contracts. So but that's the management of the team now, right? I mean, all of that's going to have to be overseen, and there's nothing, again, is what it is.
Yeah, is what it is. So what do we have right now for some comments, Boomer, Rob? What do we have in the comment section there.
Well, most of so far, I mean, there was one earlier that was put up by, I posted it, and BA coach, was talking about Butler automatically getting the D role. Hope it works out. Was just not thrilled about it yet. You know what though, BA, like one of the things that we said here is that when Butler was brought in, everyone knew like that's what it was announced that he was being brought in for, right? And I mean, let's not look past the fact too that Snow himself is a defensive guy too, right? I mean, and he has NFL experience. So there's a lot of defensive guys we're bringing in here, even as like an associate head coach. So I don't think that Butler is doing this on his own. I'm sure that there is like some kind of a mindset that's going to be, a few guys, brain trust.
I wouldn't go as far to say that it was, nothing was stated back in the summer when he came in, but there was a lot of assumptions that you're bringing in somebody that obviously had been working in the pros and had aspirations of getting back into being an OC or DC and had been a DC at the Big Ten level. But I guess, at the end of the day, I'm not going to question Rhule on his defensive coordinator picks. He's done pretty well. He's had 2 different D coordinators, he said, and both of them have been Broyle Award or finalists. So, and defensively, bringing in somebody or keeping somebody that's been a part of this, I think can help with some of that continuity and that transition there. No, I'm reading something there. So
that's all right.
That's okay. Okay. Well, let's move on here. Let's go on to bowl prep. And so in Nebraska, we're going to be playing December 28th, 11 a.m. In the Pinstripe Bowl, as everyone wanted, New York and in December, but it does harken back a little bit. Boomer, we're historians of Husker football, and it harkens back to the first bowl game of Devaney. The first bowl victory Nebraska's ever won was in the Gotham Bowl, played against the University of Miami back in 1962. There was about 7,000 people in the stands, and when we had Mike Babcock on, he said that Devaney joked that most of the people there were dressed as empty seats. So, I think we have a little bit of precedence there with playing in the Yankee Stadium and everything. But as we talk here, let's bring up some of the notes from the Pinstripe Bowl press conference. Athletic Director Dannon, a lot of us understand that December in New York City is the best time. We have about 4,000 alum in the city, getting to engage them, a lot of enthusiasm. Obviously, New York, college football-wise, in December, you've had, for many, many years, the Heisman Trophy was awarded there. He says, he goes on to say, we're happy for our program to get back. This is an important step for us to get back to where we think we belong. Maybe we'll start with that, Boomer. I mean, there is an element of just this is getting back to a bowl. I mean, it's not the bowl that we all want to be, and 6-6 isn't what we want to be next year and the year after that. But like, it is a start. It's the first start in getting back on track with where Nebraska football should go.
Yeah. So looking at it that way, you can definitely say it's a positive. I mean, that was probably the key thing. I think everyone said going into this season is you have to make a bowl game this season. So they did, you can check that off the list. Maybe it's the D- or D+ of bowls. It's not a bowl they like to give out, but hey, it works. It accomplished your goal. You got to the bowl. You got the extra practices. You got that monkey off your back that you've been the longest Power 4 team without a bowl appearance. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So I'm not even sure who currently has the streak for that, but it's no longer us, so we don't have to worry about it. So there is that. It is not the bowl, like you said, we all were hoping for. I think everyone was looking at, maybe going to Tampa or Nashville or something, playing a more glamorous opponent, whether it's a SEC opponent or, a Big 12 familiar school. Instead, we get Boston College, with our long storied history with them. Maybe watching Doug Flutie play for a few of us. I don't know. That's probably the extent of it for most of us. So, there's that. It's New York. It's December. Yeah, it's got to be better than the Gotham Bowl. I think, like you said, there were about 6,000 or 7,000 people that showed up for that. I think the Nebraska pilot didn't want to fly because the check hadn't cleared yet, so we almost didn't make that bowl game. It was a mess of a bowl game, so I think we'll be better off for that. I don't know what attendance will be, but it's a Saturday game. People should watch. I mean, it's early, so is it 11 a.m. kickoff or it'd be noon there?
Noon their time, yeah.
So probably will be the most exciting thing ever, but like I said, it'll give you a good chance to look forward to seeing some of the players that are going to be, more involved, I think, next season. Just be, by default, you're going to see younger players, and it's what you want to see. And it's just kind of treated as like a pre-spring practice, I guess, section. So
I just happen to have a bunch of friends that live out on the East Coast, and they go out to Nebraska Rutgers games. They're pretty pumped for this. So I know a handful of people, probably 20, 25 of them that are planning to go to this one. So I'm excited from that perspective. It's interesting, too, to me that we've talked about in the era of the college football playoff, how that's going to render the regular season not important. That was one of the fears. Well, as we found throughout, whether it's games being played for the playoff or even Nebraska, Iowa, if you're not happy with where we're playing right now, it's pretty much because we lost that Iowa game. That Iowa game meant something. It wasn't just the difference between being 7-5 and 6-6. If we're 7-5, we're not playing in the Pinstripe Bowl. So games still matter. The regular season definitely still matters. And as we saw, Boomer, and you've given some good examples of this, I think it's made more games matter on a national level. And I think that's a net positive.
Yeah, and it clearly did. I mean, if you look at, I think a lot of the fear, we'll just look at the last week of the championship games. I mean, you'd hear people talk, with a playoff expansion as well. If teams know they're in the playoff, are they even going to try and play in these games? I mean, you look at like Oregon and Penn State, they both knew they were pretty much in the playoffs. Did they take that whole game off? No. Texas and Georgia? No. I mean, those were seriously played games, and everybody played. Nobody rested starters, and those came down to, being serious actual affairs. And then you look at ratings for games like the Mountain West championship game. I think I saw went from like last year they averaged about 1 million people watching it, and this year it was 3 million. Why? Well, because the winner of that game got a playoff berth. I mean, that mattered to a lot of people, and it had bearing on where teams are going to be seated coming in the playoffs. So it definitely has made a lot of games matter that last year just didn't, and people wouldn't have watched and just didn't have a great amount of interest in. So it's helped that, and like you said, it helped regular season games the entire time too. It just, I mean, think of, how many people watch Iowa State games, towards the end of the year, or, BYU or Colorado that, that probably wouldn't have. Why? Those all had bearing on, how that shakes out. I mean, who here's watching an SMU game in years? Anyone? I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't, but I did towards the end of the season, and that ACC championship game sure did. So,
well, this is a great segue here, and I just switched this over to 2025 schedule. They just announced Nebraska's schedule here the other day. But on top of that, let's talk about scheduling in general. I think we have an example with the Alabama schedule and what some of the other schools are doing. But Nebraska here, we're playing Cincinnati, and its location to be determined still because it's a home game for Cincinnati. Then they talked about just moving it to where the Colts play, and that would be
Lucas
Field. So they make more money on that. But now they're talking about, and there's a very good chance they're going to move it to Arrowhead, which is basically a home game for us at that point. But that would be where the largest bang for the buck would be, and that's what Cincinnati is looking for. Mm-hmm. Then you have Akron, Houston Christian. So you're two
Akron, weather permitting, of course.
Well, of course. Yeah. and then so those are your two non-Power 4 conference schools that would be in our schedule. Then we have our 9 Big Ten schedule games. So 10 Power 4 teams. As far as the Big Ten, it's going to be September 20th, Michigan at home, October 4th, Michigan State at home. Then we go on the road 2 consecutive weeks to Maryland and Minnesota. We come back home for 2 weeks for Northwestern and USC. We go on the road 2 more weeks, UCLA and Penn State, and we end the season at home. But again, it's 10 Power 4 games. That's what a Big Ten conference schedule looks like. And we're going to talk about Alabama's here. In fact, let me see if I can bring it up. Somewhere here I'm going to bring this up here so that we can look at this. I was blown away, honestly, by this. Their non-conference schedule to start the season next year, August 30th, is at Florida State, Doak Campbell Stadium. Then they play Louisiana Monroe Warhawks, and then they play Wisconsin. Okay, now remember, it is the SEC, so you go all the way down here to November 22nd. They're playing Eastern Illinois. So obviously this looks
so dumb.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter to me when you play. I don't really care. You play Eastern Illinois in November, whatever. The main thing that they're doing is they're playing 10 Power 4 schools here. They look like they should get like a extra credit for playing Florida State and Wisconsin. The reality is they're only playing 10 Power 4 schools, just like every Big Ten school is doing, just like we are by playing Cincinnati and our 9. But I also want to give them credit. And I guess, Rob, I'll start with you, and then I know Boomer, you've got thoughts on this too. What's interesting is with Alabama getting nixed from the playoff, that there's a push in the SEC to move away from doing this already. Like, the problem was that their schedule was too tough, and the reality, I guess I thought would stop losing to lousy teams, and you would have gotten in. But
stop
Rob,
losing to Power 4 teams. I mean, that's
sure. And 6 and 6 Power 4 teams. At that.
Yeah, 6 and 6 Power 4 teams, or Vanderbilt. You know what I mean? Or Oklahoma. Like, it's just, I mean.
Well, Rob, I've been promised by people on Twitter
first of all, it's Alabama, so let's not like forget the fact that like maybe logic passes them a little bit more than other places. But the fact of the matter is that like you can say you want to play an easier schedule in your non-conf, but you're losing to Power 4 teams in season. So that's that. I mean, all 3 losses are to Power 4. It's not like so win and you're in. I think it's simple. I mean, call me crazy, but you win those games that you should have won, and you're playing, and but
Well, Boomer, do they need to change their scheduling model, or they just need to win the games?
Well, I mean, it makes we had arguments repeatedly on Twitter, and some of them were just to poke and prod Bama and SEC fans, because that's a great off-season hobby for me. But I vaguely get what they're saying, that we should just play easy schedules, and if we do that, we'll get in. Well, I mean, you did kind of play an easy schedule, Alabama. Your non-con was nothing to write home about, especially this last season. I mean, you played what did they play? South Florida.
Here, I'll go back to
Wisconsin. Who's the other?
Western Kentucky.
And Mercer in November. I mean, those are not world beaters. Some people say,
well,
they're
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And there were SEC fans that I've seen them say, and someone said it to me, that Vanderbilt and Oklahoma would be 8 or 9 win teams in any other conference. And no, Vanderbilt lost to which was it, Georgia State,
Georgia Southern that went 3-9.
Yes, they were terrible. And Oklahoma, I'm fairly certain, like Indiana and Penn State would score a touchdown on them. I'm fairly confident in saying that. So they were not good teams. I mean, the point I know they're trying to make is, okay, if we just go undefeated every year, then we'll make the playoffs. And yeah, that's probably true. I mean, or if you only have 1 loss, I mean, that was part of the criticism of like your Indianas. See, this year they didn't really play the toughest schedule. I mean, their non-con was bad, but their conference schedule on paper should have been good. I mean, you had Michigan and Washington, who were 2 playoff teams last year, and they just happened to fall into the complete dumpster this year. And played Ohio State and didn't play well, but Alabama didn't play Oklahoma well, so that's the problem. So if you're going to go with that soft schedule route, you have to win every game. I mean, one of my arguments with the Alabama fans was, saying you need an easier schedule. Well, let's say you played Ohio State this year and won. Well, you're probably in the playoff, because not only have you knocked out probably another, a team from a different conference that threatened to make the playoffs, but they didn't make their championship game. If Alabama beats Ohio State in the non-con, I bet they're in over Ohio State this year, with everything else being the same. I mean, so it's just, which route do you want to take? Do you want to just try to run the table and win all your games and just hope you can run the table in the SEC, or do you challenge yourself a little bit and try to balance that out?
Boomer,
and that's the risk they're going to take. And if they want to go that route, that's fine.
You can try to run the table, or you can try to do what Wisconsin did here. Wisconsin, 2025 here for people watching live. The Wisconsin 25 schedule. They start with Miami of Ohio and Middle Tennessee. And then a little bit of a gauntlet in the middle here, at Alabama, Maryland, at Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, at Oregon, Washington, at Indiana, Illinois, and then they finish at Minnesota. And, the reality is I try to play this a little bit slow each year. Like, you never know who's going to be good or not. Michigan this year was 7-5 versus a national championship team a year ago. Washington played the national championship last year. They weren't that same team this year. Indiana, if you had them on the schedule this year, it didn't look that great coming into it, and look at what they are. I don't know if Indiana is going to be the same thing next year. So I know we can't just look at this and immediately just say, hey, that's going to be murderer's row. I'm not convinced that Alabama is getting better right now. The further they get away from Saban. But having said that, this still looks really, really stupid.
Yeah, that's
They might
that's a
win 4
challenging
games
schedule.
next year, maybe.
Yeah, it's they're kind of in period of changes too with offensive changes, and we'll see what they pull out of that. But right now when you're saying thank God we play, we finished with Indiana, Illinois, and Minnesota, who aren't they're just decent Big Ten teams. If that's the soft part of your schedule, the second 2/3 of the year, that's a tough road to hoe. So,
Well, I'm sure Fickle will turn it all around.
I don't either, but I guess we'll see what he does this offseason. And this is not the schedule to turn things around with, so that one's tough.
I was sort of joking.
All right. Yeah. Well, we're going to get to Courtside Cooking and talk some volleyball in a second here. But before we do, we always have to, find one big national major issue that's just burning, and that we have to figure out. And I guess this one from On3 today, and Boomer, you must have retweeted this. Glad to see Ohio politicians have solved every other issue. But Ohio State Representative Josh Williams introduced the OHIO Sportsmanship Act. The act would make it a felony offense to plant a flag in the center of Ohio Stadium. I can't stop laughing when I see that. So,
oh my God, and not like asking us not to pray at midfield was bad.
I wonder, do you have to physically plant it, or can you just stand there and wave it at midfield? Is that acceptable? I guess
I don't know.
To read the details.
See, if I was Michigan and I did that
Boomer.
again, I would make sure that there was enough players to understand like the flag being planted in Iwo Jima or something, and like actually did that, like formed a wall and allowed the players to do that, so there was at least somewhere a still picture of Michigan like planting a flag like Iwo Jima or something.
Yeah.
That would just be
The
perfect.
midfield, that will be an ongoing discussion, I'm sure, as we get into the offseason. But
I can't wait to talk about that.
Ohio State waited no time at all. So, all right. Well, Abby joined us here, and we're going to Courtside Cooking. Let's talk a little bit of volleyball. And,
hi, Abby.
last week. Hi, how you doing, Abby? You feeling okay?
I'm here.
You're here. Nebraska, not unsurprisingly, went 2-0 last weekend at home. Florida A&M and Miami 2-3-0 sweeps. So that was good. I'll tell you, watching that first set of Florida A&M, that was like, I love dominance, but that was uncomfortable almost to watch, like 25-3. What was it? They finished on like a 19-0 run there.
Something ridiculous like that. And it was so funny because I think right before that game, they had I think Lincoln Arnell had tweeted out that like Penn State beat Delaware 25-4. And it was just like, holy cow, you held a team to 4 points. Like, it doesn't matter who you're playing. 4 points is insane. And then you watch that first set and we held them to 3. And it was just like, guys, this isn't like, it's not a contest. It kind of felt like a fun little contest. Like, 4, suck it. We can do 3. But it was at times. And as somebody who has played, been on teams that have done that and been on teams that have had games like that happened to them, it's not fun. It's not fun for either side. And I say that I'm sure the Nebraska girls are really glad they won. They're not going to, I'm sure they'd prefer to win by a lot more than a close game, but it really is not fun. Beating teams that badly. It starts to feel kind of bad, and like you don't want to let up, obviously, but like it's you almost do, because you just can't kind of help. You can't help it. It's hard to play at that intense of a level for that long.
Yeah.
Like that.
Dumb luck. Yeah. Here's the tweet that we sent out on Friday night that this is almost uncomfortable to watch. 25-3. By dumb luck, you think somebody would get 6 or 7 points. Just bad serve. Like
Florida A&M's not a bad team. They're from the SWAC, so I think people don't give them credit. But I watched their tournament play, and they're a good team. That was unexpected for a tournament team, and they got it. I think I watched a TikTok, because I'm that person now, of them later. Mm-hmm. And they just talked about like it, the environment was big, and it was probably the biggest one they've played in. And I just think that they were not prepared for it, which I think says a lot about what it's like to play at the Bob if you've never played in a place like that.
there's a reason, like in college sports, like even in the NCAA basketball tournament, where the number one team tends to almost always blow out. Maybe volleyball isn't the same, but I mean, that's why you have a number 1 and a number 16 seed.
Well, last week, Louisville almost lost to, what was it, Northern Iowa? And that would have been the
did.
first one. Yeah, the first 1 seed ever. So to your point there,
It can
Rob,
happen. We saw it happen a couple years ago in the NCAA tournament. Yeah.
Well, no, it's so in basketball. Yeah, to your point, a 1 seed a few years ago, and now it's happened twice. Finally happened, but in volleyball, that's never happened,
Abby.
Right, Abby? Like a 1 seed has
Dustin just
never.
shook his head, by the way, as we talked about that about a couple years ago, a 1 seed loss. I just looked over and he's just like,
Was that Farley Dickinson in Purdue?
Yeah.
Sorry.
he didn't
Honestly,
know
Harry
he
Dickinson.
today.
It's Fairleigh Dickinson, but I like Farley Dickinson.
Is it really Fairley? Oh,
Yeah, Fairleigh
whatever.
Dickinson. Yeah.
Well, I'm fairly sure we haven't won a NCAA tournament game
an
ever. So,
NCAA tournament game ever. So there you go.
But yeah, but in volleyball, a 1 seed has never not made it this far to the next weekend. So what, and this happened again this year, but Louisville they were close there. But Nebraska dominance. Talk a little bit, Abby, about the Miami win, because that was it was closer at least, but it was still a 3-0 sweep. But I mean, that was a good team Miami had, and they had one dominant player there, but she was making as many mistakes as she was getting kills, it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, Miami beat Texas this season, I think, when Texas was still ranked pretty high. So that's there's not a slouchy team. The ACC is a very good volleyball conference this year. It was a lot more fun. I was a little bit more worried about it, and I didn't think we'd sweep just because it's tournament and you're always going to get the best. Like, people are always going to play their best games in the tournament. But I just think that our serving was so much more impressive. I think if you go back and look at, not that you want to rewatch the Penn State game, but if you go back and rewatch that match, really what hurt us is we just didn't serve to our capability. And I think we just served so much better and got them completely out of rhythm and made it really obvious where they were going to go, which was that outside hitter who was very good. She knows she's good. But I think that really is benefiting us this year. We haven't seen, we for sure didn't see last year. I don't think we were that great of a serving team last year. But I think that really made the difference in that Miami match. Was just, I mean, and once you do that, they have good servers too, but I feel like once you get in that rhythm of being a good serving team and you put pressure on them, then even your serve receive and everything else just plays a lot easier because you've got that confidence going in.
Well, go back to that Florida A&M game for a second. Yeah, we outclassed them talent-wise and everything, but to score 19 straight points meant you served 19 times in a row. I mean, it doesn't matter.
That's hard to do. That's hard to do.
Bill Callahan would say, that's a good catch against air, when somebody would throw a nice pass in practice. Well, if you're serving it 19 times in a row, I don't care if no one's on the court who you're playing against, you still have to get it in. And to do that 19 times in that pressure situation, that just is
who
really
is serving
impressive.
that? Who served that set the 19 times in a row?
Ooh.
That's a really good question. I don't know.
If someone watching knows that, or do you know it, Rob?
I don't. I'll be 100% honest here. I was doing something with the family on Friday, and I missed like the first
making excuses.
Let me see if I can find it.
Well, I don't know, but I couldn't watch the game though.
Yeah, if anyone's watching, throw it in the comments too here. But yeah, so we make it through the first week. We go 2-0, and now we're in the Sweet 16. 2 more games. We're making it to the Final Four this weekend at Devaney Center. Another weekend of it, so we're playing at home. And we start off with Dayton, and then after that, the other game. I mean, there's so many storylines here. It's Wisconsin against A&M. So Trevin, we cannot get out of the postseason anymore. We saw it in basketball, men's and women's last March, and now this. We can't get out of the postseason without playing A&M, and then Wisconsin. We also can't get out of the postseason without seemingly playing Wisconsin anymore too. So, Abby, do you have any wisdom here? Do you have any preference what you'd want to see out of that game, assuming that Nebraska takes care of Dayton?
No, I don't want to. I'm at that point where I don't know if I want us to play Wisconsin again. I mean, beating a team 3 times is hard. It's hard to beat them twice, and then adding in a third.
They were injured early in the season too, right? So I mean, they've gotten some of those injuries. I mean, we're going to get them full strength now.
They got some of those injuries out, but then some of their other injuries have come back. So like Charlie Furbringer was out for a concussion protocol for a long time. I think their other defensive specialist was out for a while, and I can't remember if they're back yet or not.
That's what I heard, that they were back to full strength now for this weekend.
But we got them at full strength. I think their injuries, I don't think they had the same injuries when we played them at least the second time. So the benefit of playing Wisconsin again is we know how to play Wisconsin. Right. And they seem to have a good game plan every time we've played them. So the thought is like, maybe we still have that good game plan. The downside is again, it is very hard to beat a team 3 times. A&M is a good team. Obviously they're in the Sweet 16. That's you don't get there without being a good team. Are they as good as Wisconsin? We'll find out. Would it be nice to play a different team that we haven't seen multiple times? Yes. But is that a little more dangerous because we don't really know what to expect? Also, yes. So it'll be a good match if we, and this is the important part, is if we can get past Dayton. And I think Dayton is a very good team too. We'll see. I think we can. I haven't watched a lot of Dayton. We'll see if I'll be able to do that tomorrow. But I think if we can, it's just like what's better, the opponent or the opponent you don't. And I haven't decided where I fall on that yet.
Well, one thing I do know is the show that you did last week with Emily Amon, VTN Network, that was on point. That was well done there. If you haven't watched that yet, Redcasters, go back. It's on all of our different platforms and watch or listen to it. But excellent job there, Abby, and it's a great preview to the tournament, but which still mostly applies because a lot of those teams that you guys talked about are still in. So well done.
Yeah, Emily's great. She's very, very knowledgeable and always really fun to talk to her about this kind of stuff. So yes, please go listen if you haven't. And if you're not following Emily on Twitter, please do, even though she thinks Northwestern is the real NU. It's okay. We'll get there. She went to Northwestern, so it's understandable why she'd be wrong about it.
We'll give her that break, I guess. Yeah. All righty. Well, so volleyball, 2 more games this weekend, and hopefully we'll have a lot more to talk about next week, coming off a couple of wins. Next up then is the Nebraska Bowl, and we're going to be talking about both the men's and the women's teams. The men, right when they pull you in, right when you think that it just, this is the team that got it. We've got all the depth. We've got the size. We beat Creighton, handily. Creighton turned at Creighton, and then they turned around at home and beat number 1 Kansas handily. And it's like, oh man, I remember. I was listening to Muehlheisen and Pavelka driving back from Kansas City on Saturday morning, and listening to them, and Muehlheisen even said, he goes, this team, I'm not worried about this team getting blown out. I'm not, this team is going to be competitive. And it's like, and I 100% believe it. We have good talent. We have good size. We have and I was really disappointed in just the overall effort against Michigan State to get out rebounded the way that we did. I don't even have the final numbers. The refs sucked, but they always do. And the refs can't explain, the lack of competitiveness that was shown there in that game. So they have a chance to come back here now on Friday night, 7 p.m. Central on Fox. So national TV at home. We're going to have Indiana, another great competitor there, but this is a chance to get PBA going here and hopefully build off some of the success that we had last year at home. 48-19 in rebounds. Good grief. So, Abby, I'll let you start and we can go around the room here. But what were your thoughts, I guess, on that game?
It just felt like everything that could go right for Michigan State did, and everything that could go wrong for Nebraska did. It was like both it was their ultimate game and our ultimate bad game. It just couldn't do anything right in that game. And then you're right, like there was just seemingly a lack of it's just, I don't want to say they gave up because I don't think they did, but they got manhandled. And there was a point where Dustin pointed out, he's like, you should just put all your backups in. Just pull your starters. You're down by like 30. Just put your backups in, let them play, see what happens. But yeah, I think it was just hopefully just get all the bad out in one game, one massive game.
Rob, was this one, were you able to watch this one?
I actually was not. Thank you for asking, Honky.
At least I asked before we got into
it. I had, again, this was a big family weekend. It's the holidays, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But no, I did go back and I tried to watch the replay of it and just couldn't do it. Like,
brutal.
Oh my God. Yeah.
When you know what the finish is, you know when the final score is.
Yeah. And I will say this is that, you know what? I don't care. It's one loss. It's hard to win on the road in the Big Ten. So, lose by 30, lose by 3. It doesn't matter. It's hard to win on the road in the Big Ten. So move on, get the win against Indiana. Then you've got, Murray State, Southern U, and then you have that school. I don't know. People may have heard UCLA. The classic Big Ten matchup of UCLA and Nebraska.
Very similar histories between our two programs there.
Well, in a mirror way, though, UCLA, they are a blue blood of college basketball. So
that part is absolutely true. We are not. We are with football. But Boomer, it's still early, but RPI and all the metrics, everything that if we have Dave on, he'll get into those as well. What does losing 40 or 35 points? I mean, I 100% agree with Rob here, by the way. Don't let this one loss lead to 2 losses and 3 losses. You just got to this isn't football, and you can lose a couple times and be okay, or at least this wasn't old school football that way. So it is just one loss, but it is a loss by 30-some points. How does that affect us on an RPI basis versus if we had lost by 5? Is there any metric that would hurt us there that you're aware of?
I don't think RPI takes into account scoring. I think a loss is a loss.
Or net, the net rating.
I'd have to look if net does. I don't believe RPI did. So
we're
all
68 in the net right now. We actually
all that factored in was win losses, where it took place at quad.
We actually moved up in the net rankings to 2 points.
It helped when Creighton beat Kansas, so that was the big help there that pushed.
What are we in net? I thought we were in the 30s. Did we fall that much after losing?
I'm looking at NCAA rankings for net. And we're at 68.
I thought we were in
10th, 24.
10/24, like
no, 10 December 10th, 2024.
Oh, okay.
I remember. I remember when we talked about net a few years ago. It takes into account like your efficiency more so than the gap of how you lose. It looks at your offensive efficiency versus your defensive efficiency, and that factors into it. So. Yeah, it's not good to lose by 40. I think at any whatever metric you're looking at, that's less than ideal. Let's just go with that. But just don't do it again. Let's go with that. So that was too much of the Nebraska ball of old. We're used to with the comforting horizontal lines and everything else. We don't want that. Yeah.
I'll finish the men's side with this one. This was from Corn Nation during it. Their tweet: Nebraska now down 60-34, 17-1 run for Sparty, out rebounded 34-15. This is a good game to start conference play. Will remind us that playing on the road is hell, officiating is crap all the time. Prepare our beloved Huskers for the rest of the season. So, we just gotta move past that game, and there's a lot of basketball ahead for them. But I think it's time. Let's move on to the women's team tonight. Abby, they beat Tarleton State.
Tarleton State.
Tarleton State. Okay.
Yep.
But I actually want to go back a game, and here we have them here where they took down the Gophers, and we talk about blowing a team out. They blew out Minnesota 84-65. That was a hell of a win. That was a big win there. Talk a little bit, Abby, about the team so far. Now a game or two into a conference play.
Yeah, I think I don't want to buy into the hype too much because again, conference play coming up, Big Ten women's basketball conference is rough. It's going to be rough. I think there's 6 teams ranked right now. I don't remember. UCLA, USC, Ohio State, Iowa, Nebraska, Michigan State. No, Maryland. I don't know. There's like six or seven teams that are ranked in the women's world for basketball. So it's going to be tough. But man, do they look like they're a good team, even when, maybe shooting, the baskets aren't falling the way that maybe we want them to. But that defense, our defense just is really, really playing well. And that's without Natalie, which I think is saying a whole lot. I think coming into that game, Minnesota was like one of the top defensive scoring teams or something like that. And the fact that we scored as many as we did and is just, I think that really says a lot about what our team is able to do and how they're able to play as a unit. And there's some good depth. I have good feelings about them. I'll be honest. It's not unusual, I think, to be like, I have a little bit more faith in our women's sports than our men's. I have faith in our men's sports and our men's basketball team. I really do. I've got a lot of faith in these women, and I think there's going to be a lot of tough games coming up. That road trip out to California over Christmas is going to be incredibly tough. But I think they're going to be good games. I think they can compete.
You could end the comment that I have more faith in the Husker women's, and it could just end right there. You don't have to justify it with anything more.
There are 8 ranked teams, by the way, in the Big Ten in the women's basketball now.
Rob, I have the top 25 up here. So what? There's UCLA is 1,
UCLA, USC
is 5,
Maryland
is 7,
is there.
Ohio State
is
Ohio
in
State
there.
11,
Michigan State is ranked.
Michigan State,
17.
Michigan, Iowa, and Nebraska.
Yeah, sheesh. I mean, that is.
It's crazy because Nebraska's 9-1 and they're 24, and it's so hard for them to move up. You know what I mean? It's just because women's basketball has always been one of those sports too, where there's not as many upsets from lower teams as there are in the top 25 type of environment until you start really getting deep into leagues. So that's where we'll see some of that. I don't know if you want to call it parity yet, but you'll see a lot of movement in there. Throughout that time. One of the teams that's missing here that really blows my mind that I haven't seen on this list, and maybe I missed them, is Stanford. Which is crazy to me because Stanford has been a perennial top team in women's college basketball for years and years and years. And now where'd they go?
Yeah, I just brought them up. I just did a search, and right away it brings up the Atlantic Coast Conference, which I'm just not expecting to see. But they are 7-2 right now. Stanford is overall, but they're 0-2 away and 7-0 at home. I didn't see them in the top 25. That doesn't mean they weren't. I guess I just wasn't looking for them there. But crazy, I mean, there are more. For a long time, women's basketball, you had UConn and you had. There was La Tech, there was Tennessee, there's a limited number of schools. Now there are so many more schools that have gotten better. There's more resources. I mean, this is another off-season discussion that we've had before with volleyball. But it's amazing that when you start to put resources and you start to televise games, and I'm still frustrated with that with basketball right now too, or with volleyball, is that you still have to have a certain package or whatever to be able to watch some of these early games. And, they've made steps, but I mean, if you want to grow the sport, and this was something even I think when you were talking with Emily last week, if you want to grow the sport, it's not enough just to have it on ESPN Plus where somebody has to go get a separate, package on top of what they're already paying for. That part is frustrating, but it is still better than where it was. I'll never forget that Nebraska-Texas championship game. I think it was 2016. And that was, incredible environment, sold out arena and everything. And we were on ESPN2, so that ESPN1 could play the Boca Raton Bowl between, 2 schools in front of, 12,000 people. And it's better than that, but we can still do better.
And we'll get there. I mean, I think it's hard. I don't know. I keep thinking it's hard because it also coincides with football, and it does to an extent. Saturday was tough, because you had a lot of really good volleyball games on, but you also had conference championship games on. And I think as much as Nebraskans and maybe Wisconsins and Pitt fans, people like that acknowledge and love their women's sports and support that, it's just at this point isn't going to make more money for these people than football. So some of that is just like scheduling is always going to be tough to compete with the big ones. But yeah, well, I'm hoping.
And they're adding a lot of inventory, just showing the games they're showing now that they weren't before. That's you know what goes. And then in football, now you're adding more games between playoffs and everything. So there is. I don't want to make it ever sound like it's easy, but look at Nebraska men's basketball here on Friday night. They're going to be playing national television on Fox. That didn't exist. Fox wasn't showing college basketball on Friday nights, and they weren't showing Nebraska for certain. So there are more. Because these $1 billion TV contracts that have come out here, you're going to see more sports on more channels at more times, more availability moving forward, and hopefully that doesn't just get limited just to a few select men's sports. So, all right, hey, hour and 10 minutes. That's pretty typical of us here. On a Wednesday night talking carousels and portals and bowl games and volleyball and all that. Let's get to our parting shots, and we're going to start with Redcast Rob.
Well, I just want to say that I think it's probably a good time right now for everybody just to take a little break from social media and not worry about what's going on, because it's obviously just going to work itself out in the off season like it always does. I looked at next year's schedule. I'm seeing 12 wins, and I really don't understand what the fuss is all about. Our coaching hires, trust in Rhule, NIL, it's fine. I don't care. Pay the kids. Transfer portal is what it is. We got to get to 105 and go Big Red.
All right, go Big Red. Redcast Abby.
So I'm going to piggyback a little bit off the NIL and the social media thing and just remind people that you don't have to be, hopefully I can say this word and we won't get penalized. You don't have to be dicks to kids who enter the portal. You don't know why they're entering. You don't know anything about it. You don't know why they come back, but you do know that they can see the things you say and they do search their names, and you can think that's stupid or not, but they see it when you call them bums. They see it when you call them trash. They see it when you try to derogate them just because they entered the portal. And at the same time, be cool about the people who do enter the portal from other schools. They're not inherently the best players that we can ever get, just like the ones we're losing are not inherently the worst players we've ever had. So don't be jerks. Be nice. Just be kind, guys. Just be kind.
Yeah.
Our Redcast listeners are the greatest. I'm sure they're not.
Absolutely. Redcasters are great. But an 18 to 22-year-old's decision, whatever it is, doesn't have to make you lower your own personal integrity. And when you're going out there
getting called out by one of those players too on social media after you that would be unfortunate.
All right, Redcast Boomer.
Well, I mean, that's crazy talk, Abby, to start. Every player we lose is just a quitter that has no, dedication or heart to the program. And every player we get that comes in was one that clearly is just trying to better themselves and get in that championship team and buys the culture and is all in. So, I mean, that just goes for itself. And then Justin asked the question, going back to our discussion on Ohio, what qualifies as a flag? Can he paint a Husker logo on a chunk of plywood and plant it on the 50-yard line? And, the Redcast other passion outside of sports and pro wrestling and everything else is parsing language of state statutes. And I do have the Ohio sportsmanship bill in front of us, where it says no person shall plant a flagpole with a flag attached to it in the center of the football field at Ohio Stadium of the Ohio State University on the day of a college football competition, whether before, during, or after. And that's a felony of the 5th degree in Ohio. So yes, by the way the rule is written, you can paint the Nebraska logo on a piece of plywood and plant it in the 50-yard line, and they can't do anything about it because that's not how they wrote the statute. Assuming it comes to pass.
Boomer, sorry, is that we can go in the next morning and put a flag.
Oh, you can plant it the next morning, and that's perfectly fine. You may be trespassing, but that's a different law altogether.
That's not felony.
That's not a felony. Yeah, probably a $5 fine in Ohio. You can just mail that in. But yeah, take the flag off the flagpole. You're fine. Don't plant the flag in the middle. You're fine. paint it on your plywood, you're fine. So there's loopholes, people. So take
Why
advantage
would
of
you
those.
plant a flag anyway? Do they grow?
With enough water, yes, or Brondo, either one. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love you, Boomer. Jeez.
We're here to help.
Well, for my parting shot, of course, I have a couple. The first one is just enjoy volleyball right now. And I say that we are in the middle of a very long dynasty that has been John Cook, but don't take it for granted. There's no guarantees, ever, right? I mean, I think whenever Coach Cook leaves, we're going to have the pick of the litter for whoever we want to replace him. But the reality is there's never any guarantees. And the point is, enjoy every moment of this. As uncomfortable as winning 25-3 and watching those sets can be. And I say that tongue in cheek. I know I posted that and people are like, it's not uncomfortable at all. We dominate them. I'm just saying enjoy the moments and there's no guarantee we're going to win every one of the remaining games this year, but this has been an amazing season already. It's an amazing team. It's an amazing program. Enjoy it. I think I want to piggyback off of what Rob and Abby, I think everyone's been saying here. Especially on social media, don't worry so much about being right or about being first. We tweeted something earlier this week saying that we have proudly never broken any news on the Redcast in 70,000 tweets and 8 years of being on social media. And even though we don't consider ourselves a media source in terms of like we're not journalists, although we have
Can I
between
stop
Abby
you there,
and
Honky?
we've had some press passes and stuff, but. Yes, you can stop me, Rob.
I actually have broken news before when Chancellor Brewington announced that he was going to be playing in the season.
Well, you didn't break it; he broke it.
He did. That's true, but the Redcast did on our show. Yes.
The point is, we've had chances to break stuff. We know people. We know things on the back end sometimes that happen, and we don't say stuff. And for one of the reasons is because if it's not ours to tell, we're not going to tell it. But I'm not that concerned about being first or being right, and especially when it comes to rumors, and it's rumors of real life. These people have real lives, and when you spread things and all that, they're just, I don't know. It just gets to be kind of gross and icky, and that's certainly not what we're about. So I would just recommend other people to kind of think of that before they post things and think that they know maybe more than they know, because as you said, Abby, sometimes you just don't know, and most people when they post things they don't know. Last but not least. College Football Hall of Fame, I mentioned it earlier. Nebraska, the state of Nebraska, is well represented. We have two different people that are being inducted this year. Frank Solich, former Husker, played under Devaney, obviously longtime assistant coach, and then head coach from 98 to 2003, and then went on to have a incredible career at Ohio. The field is named after him there in Athens, Ohio. So congratulations to Coach Solich, well-deserved. And then Danny Woodhead, North Platte's own, and went to Chadron State and won the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy for Division II. One last thing I remember is there was a season where Colorado in Game 1 lost to Montana State. So it was an FBS team losing to an FCS team, and then the next week Montana State played Chadron State and lost to Chadron State. So an FCS team lost to a Division II. So if you looked at from like a scholarship perspective, the team that had 85 scholarships lost to a team with like 62 scholarships, and the 62 scholarship team the next week lost to a team that had like 36 scholarships. So long story short, I always remember that was one of those years of Dan Hawkins. But congratulations, Danny Woodhead. Congratulations to Frank Solich. That's what we got this week for the Redcast. Until next week, go Big Red this weekend. Men's basketball, obviously volleyball. Let's stay healthy. Women's basketball there, and let's try to just watch the portal, but don't be consumed by it if at all possible. So until next week, that's another Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
GBR.
A Herd at Sports Network production.